So there we go. So let's just get started. This project kind of started out really small. We found these stunning photographs by J.R. Koontz, and it sort of just turned into this whole production. So there's a lot going on with it, a lot of moving pieces. In-house in the museum, we have 3 sections of the museum dedicated to this exhibit. In our window, we have sort of a teaser of what's inside. It has sort of a studio setup. Inside, we have in our gallery most of the exhibit. It kind of takes you through his work, through the history of photography, and then in our community room is where the majority of the photos are. And I wish that I could describe them really well, but really you just have to come in and see them. They're just simply stunning. So along with that, J.R. Koontz took many, many photos. So we have a lot of those photos on our website starting next week. So you can go on there, you can browse and just see all of the images. So a lot in the museum, a lot online. But let's dive into our talk. I'm going to hand it over to Sue. Sue's going to go first. She's going to kind of take you through the beginning stages of photography, kind of where were we during the time that JR was taking photos. And then she'll hand it over to Sandy, and Sandy will take you through his work. And yeah, so it should be a great talk. So Sue, you should be able to share your screen whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm going to give it a shot here. I think I missed a step.
Should be in the bottom ribbon, green share screen.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, there we go. There, now I have it.
All right.
Okay. All right, I think I'm good to go.
There we go.
Hey, everybody, yeah. Nice to see you. I'm going to start right here, drawing with light. Most of us would find it hard to believe that the roots of photography reach way back, even farther than the official birth date of commercial photography, which was 1839. There is even some evidence that the basic concept could have been discovered by prehistoric cave painters. But it was Sir John Herschel who coined the word photography, which literally means drawing with light. A guy by the unpronounceable name Louis-Jacques Monde Daguerre, yes, he's French, developed the Daguerreotype, what we might refer to as a tin type. The finished product was actually exposed onto a piece of metal. The Daguerreotype that you see there is of Louis Daguerre. They were very clear and sharp, but easily scratched. If you find one of these at a yard sale or a rummage sale or something, they're usually in a frame with a glass over it for that very reason. By the 1850s, metal plates were replaced by glass plates. This is how the negative image looks on the glass. At first, the plates had to be wet coated with a light sensitive emulsion. It was messy, and it required the photographer to develop it right away as soon as he took the picture. Later, they were pre-coated with gelatin dry coating. The photographer could buy them in different sizes to fit his camera. They were much more portable and didn't have to be developed right away. This is what a typical camera might have looked like. The glass plate was fitted into a frame-like holder that covered the light-sensitive plate, which was then inserted into the back of the camera there. The photographer would then slide the cover off the plate, uncover the lens for a few seconds, and then put the lens cap back on. By the 1880s, photographic plates were so sensitive that it only took a second or two to get a good image on the plate. The photographer would slide the cover of the plate holder back into place and remove and replace it with another one, and he was ready for the next shot. Developing and printing could be done later in the darkroom. Lots of itinerant photographers traveled around with their equipment selling photographic portraits. Can you just imagine toting all that equipment around on your back? Quite different than the cameras we carry around today, isn't it? Professional photo developing was still a thing of the future. Most photographers developed their own plates, often in a makeshift darkroom. The Eastman Company would happily send whatever chemicals the photographer ordered. Then the photographer would do the actual developing, and he was really an artist in the darkroom. He covered the exposed plate with developing fluid that he mixed up right there in the sink. He had to watch it carefully until the image started to appear. And this is the artsy part. He had to know when to remove it and wash off the excess developer to get the best image. The plate then got a bath and fixing solution, then plain water. Once it was dry, the paper print could be made. The process for making a print from the glass negative was very much like making the negative itself. Chemicals, exposure to light, more chemicals, a good bath, and laid out flat to dry. Since people might only have one portrait taken over the course of an entire lifetime, they often had several prints made so they could give some away. Cabinet cards are what you're looking at there. They were very popular at the time. They were even made into postcards sometimes. You can see the name of the photographer was right there with the photo. Everything changed with the invention of the flexible celluloid film on a roll in the 1880s. Naturally, that meant a new kind of camera, and suddenly almost anybody could make pictures. In 1901, the Eastman Company came out with the Kodak Brownie camera, which sold for the handsome sum of $1. Kodak, by the way, is a made-up word. Mr. Eastman felt that a new product should have an entirely new name that has utterly no meaning, so that nobody would be likely to confuse it with some other product or attach any significance to the name. The Kodak Brownie had a very reasonable price, but there was a catch. It came preloaded with film, and when you had taken all the pictures, you sent the whole kit and caboodle back to the company. They developed your film, printed your pictures, and reloaded your camera. Their slogan was, "You press the button, we do the rest." The cost of that operation was somewhat more than the dollar you spent on the camera. The cameras were lightweight, easy to use, and much cheaper. Eastman had another great idea too. His little camera was heavily marketed to women and children. Everybody and her sister was taking pictures, and that was the birth of the snapshot. Suddenly, formal portraits gave way to casual poses, candid shots, and gasp, pictures of people having fun. The common explanation for all those frozen faces in 19th century portraits was that people had bad teeth, so they didn't want to smile. That may have had something to do with it, but the most likely reason is that those portraits were mimicking painted portraits, and nobody ever smiled for a painting. If you did, people would assume that you had a screw loose. Excessive smiling was associated with lewdness, loudness, drunkenness, or even mental illness. Look at those dour expressions. The rules seem to hold even in photographs that should be more lighthearted. This is the Plymouth Mandolin Club, as spelled out on the bottom of their shoes. These folks are posing outside the courthouse. Can you spot the one who's breaking the rules? She doesn't look like she's mentally ill. Looks like a perfectly nice lady. Selfies are all the rage these days. But do you know who clicked the world's first selfie? It was Robert Cornelius. He was a chemist and a photography enthusiast from Philadelphia. He set up his camera in the back of his family's store. He removed the lens cap and ran into the frame to capture his own photograph. The image capturing process took around a minute, after which he ran back out of the frame and went back to cover up the lens. On the photograph's backside, he wrote, "First light picture ever taken." It was clicked in 1839. The first ever selfie is over 175 years old. Well, this was by no means a comprehensive treatment of early photography, but I hope it'll help you understand the state of the art at the time of J.R. Koontz, who is the subject of our newest exhibit at the museum. And I'm going to turn things over to Sandy Garrison.
Thank you, Sue. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about J.R. himself. John Ray Koontz lived on his family's farm, Elmwood, on Dogwood Road, east of Bremen, his entire life. Born in 1874, he was named for his Uncle John, who passed away the day he was born. J.R. had 10 siblings and never married nor had any children. But if we can judge from his photos, he seemed well connected to his parents, siblings, friends, nieces, nephews, and neighbors. We know from a letter he wrote to one of his nephews that his formal schooling only went through 8th grade. However, there is ample evidence of his ongoing self-instruction, and several people we interviewed who knew him personally commented that he was very well read. A printer by trade, he kept busy on the farm. And beginning in the 1890s, Koontz created some extraordinary photographs, combining his natural talent with things like camera skills he continually honed and an interest in broader cultural ideas. As we will see, his photos changed over time, evolving with camera technology and changing art trends. But before we go on, let's take a brief look at what was going on in the 1890s for some context. The World's Fair opened in Chicago. Grover Cleveland, then William McKinley were in the White House. There was a depression beginning with the Panic of 1893, and the Spanish-American War began in 1898. But the decade also saw the birth of basketball and Sherlock Holmes. Ellis Island opened, Thomas Edison made his first silent movie, Coke began bottling, and the first modern Olympics were held. In the 1890s, J.R. Koontz would have been in his mid-20s, and he began taking pictures. So let's take a look at one of my favorites. This is a portrait of Adam Koontz, J.R.'s father. The family had come from Germany in the 1830s. Adam was a Civil War veteran, a successful farmer who went on to own the first steam tractor in Bremen and a father to 11 children. It seems this photo was part of a series taken on the same day. I picture J.R. moving his camera back and forth to get just the right shot. But what I love best are the parts of this picture we were never intended to see. This print would have been cut down to make a cabinet card. But because we have the whole negative, we can see that the quote-unquote studio is actually outside. It's a homemade backdrop in front of a screen door on the porch. I love that Adam's wearing his best suit coat on top and his work pants on the bottom. He's like a kid today going for senior pictures or someone attending a Zoom meeting, which makes a wonderful point about our public versus private selves, what we want to record for others to see and what we don't. It thus demonstrates what the camera is great for, accurately capturing the moment for better or for worse. Another striking feature that we were not actually supposed to see are Adam's hands. You really can see a whole biography there. I was looking for something to compare them to, searching for images of hands online. I thought these made a decent comparison. Michelangelo chose these specific hands for his David because they also created a biography. Moving on, we have another photo from the same time period. This is J.R.'s mother, Catherine Allen Koontz. What I think is interesting here is the composition. She's actually off center, and she's not even looking at the camera. Plus, I love her expression. It's extremely enigmatic. What's she thinking about? I wanted to compare this with a portrait taken by another wonderful local photographer from the same time period, Jessie Steele. These are both lovely images, but Steele was a professional photographer. While we were working on the exhibit, we had several conversations about this. Koontz was very comfortable with the fact that he was an amateur. He even added the designation amateur photographer to some of his cabinet cards. So is there a difference between doing something for love and doing it for hire? Do you get different results? Koontz's image has a rawness to it. It really feels like you can see the individual. Steele's image is lovely, but it feels more idealized, almost like an advertisement. Let's take another look at another photo of Catherine, again from the 1890s. And here she is working in the garden. And let's compare that to a painting done just a few years before. This is Song of the Lark, painted by French realist Jules Breton. Breton's work was famous for celebrating real life and the dignity of work. And there's a chance that JR might actually have been familiar with this painting. It was purchased by a group of wealthy Americans and widely circulated throughout the Midwest before coming to the Art Institute of Chicago, where it still hangs today. It was said that Breton was known for capturing a sense of home and attachment to the land. And as you can see in this picture of Koontz's, something we could also say was true of his photographs from this time. So up to this point, it seems like JR's photos have been of fairly traditional subjects, portraits and landscapes. And he also took still lifes, but by 1900, things were beginning to change. SmartHistory.org, an art historical website, says that this time period was marked by social and cultural change on a massive, unprecedented scale. Like everyone else, artists were radically affected by industrialization, political revolution, trench warfare, airplanes, talking motion pictures, radios, automobiles, and much more. And they wanted to create art that was as radical and new as modern life itself. Photography as an art form, in keeping with this idea, went through some dramatic changes over time. Pictorialism, which began in the 1860s, wanted to show the artistic merits of photography. Pictorialists even manipulated prints to achieve greater artistic expression. They were interested in beauty, tonality, and composition rather than the documentation of reality. But by the 1920s, that look had become dated and tastes changed, favoring straight photography. This style emphasized the camera's technical capabilities to produce images sharp in focus and rich in detail, with a greater attachment to reality. And you can really see echoes of both of these movements in Koontz's photos. Plus, in addition to art trends, during this time we have companies like Kodak actively promoting the idea of using cameras to tell your own story. So where does that put us with the Koontz photos? Well, if we were all about beauty and dignity in the 1890s, by 1900 to 1910, we're all about having fun. Let's take a look at some examples. I love the dirty feet in this one. A bunch of his friends. So please note that the action in some of these photos was probably staged, but the photos from this time give us a unique glimpse of daily life in rural Indiana at the turn of the last century. And it seems like the more things change, the more they remain the same. Please be sure that you visit our online gallery on our website to see more photos, and please be sure to come in to see the ones we have on display here in the library, in the museum. Let's take another look at one of my favorites from this time. It's really helpful from an art historical perspective to have Koontz's influences so well documented. Here we see what he considered to be his companions and helpers. We see his printing press and bike, reading material from books to a wide variety of magazines, cameras and supplies, and some musical instruments, a guitar, an accordion, and a gramophone. We think this picture was created for a photographer pen pal, perhaps when he met through ads in a camera magazine. I've got a second version of it. So he must have really liked it since he did it twice. So now we're up to the 1920s. Koontz is in his mid-50s and had been taking photos now for more than 30 years. However, to me, the photos from this period seem somehow less arresting, like lots you'd see in boxes at a flea market or auction. Perhaps the increasing ease of technique led to simply less compelling results. Or perhaps a change in the medium caused this. We believe by now that Koontz was using a film camera. One benefit of the old glass plate process was that it produced sharp, detailed images. In fact, glass plate negatives are still used at times by art photographers today. Whatever the case, the photos from the 1920s are still full of smiling faces and fun on the farm. One interesting thing we see from this time period is JR experimenting with collage. Not a new technique, but one experiencing popularity at the time. It basically involved deconstructing images and reassembling them to create new ones. Here's an example from another artist from the same time period. And here's a quote about that from Smart History. If we consider the work of the Cubists and the Futurists, we often think of their works in terms of simultaneity and speed, deconstruction and reconstruction. Dadaists, too, challenged the boundaries of traditional art with performances, poetry, installations, and photomontage that used the materials of everyday culture instead of paint, ink, canvas, or bronze. The photographs in our collection end around this time, although thanks to artifacts on loan from family members, we know JR continued taking pictures and even experimented with motion pictures. He passed away at age 74 in 1947. Some things we are hoping you might take away from the exhibit include the idea that creativity can happen anywhere, even in rural Indiana at the turn of the last century. But it does take some courage, even just the everyday sort, to pursue it and to keep trying new things. And we struggled with what we were going to call the exhibit and finally settled on the word extraordinary. JR's work fit into its era, but also stood out. We think this was true because he combined his natural talent with continuing education. He kept up both with camera technology and art trends. Plus, he connected to the larger world of ideas and with other photographers. And it also seemed he had a supportive environment. Friends and family were willing to pose. He was allowed to live in the old family farmhouse when a beautiful new one was built. We hope that seeing JR's creative vision encourages visitors to pursue their own. We wanted to say a quick thank you to family members Calvin Koontz, Diane Evelyn, and Alice Henning for sharing their memories of JR with us and for loaning us artifacts for the exhibit. To Derek Jensen, Historic Bremen, for sharing information and photos with us. And to our archives manager, Karen Reniger, for scanning and archiving JR's negatives, adding them to our collection several years ago, which actually got the ball rolling for this exhibit. And last, to our director, Linda Rippey, for giving us the green light to go ahead. And now I'm going to turn things back over to Sarah and see if there's some questions.
All right, thank you so much to our assistant director, Sue Irwin, and to our exhibit coordinator, Sandy Garrison. Yeah, so if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat box. Or if you have a microphone, you can go ahead and just ask it. Just make sure you're unmuted. You'll see that in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. It'll say mute. So if anyone has a question or a comment.
This is Derek Jensen.
Go ahead, Derek.
I think I remember somebody saying that the Koontz family photos, many of them on glass plates, had actually been buried at the farm to get rid of them at one point. Have you heard that story as well?
Did you hear that?
No.
No, had not heard that.
There was a comment on Facebook about someone sliding back into view. There was a comment, I think, at one point to something that maybe was on Facebook about someone saying that they thought that there had been a box of photos in the basement.
Yeah.
But that's as close as we come, I think, to being underground. Sarah, do you remember any more about that?
Just say
I
excuse
have
me.
not heard.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Yes.
This is Don Koontz. I'm from Michigan.
Hello.
Hello. And Adam Koontz would have been my great-grandfather.
Welcome.
And I believe my Uncle Jake, my dad's brother, had a number of those glass plates. They were in boxes in his basement. He also was a photographer. And he worked for Alt's Camera Shop in South Bend. Now, what happened to all the glass plates from there? He has passed away years ago. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to know if those could be unearthed. We'd love to scan
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I seen them when I was a child, you know,
Yeah.
the glass plates, and they were really something to see. I mean, the actual pictures were right on the glass.
That's the way they developed them, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But what happened to him after he passed away? I don't know what his family done with them.
Well, that would be a treasure trove. It certainly
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
And we were surprised. One of the nieces just gave us a call a couple of days ago and said she had a box of things in her basement, and she brought them to us, and we included them in the exhibit here at the museum. Just random things, really. No photos. I don't think she had
There were
photos.
a few negatives
few.
that were stuck inside.
Photos. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's on our Zoom call right now.
Oh,
Hi, Alice.
She's listening in.
yeah.
Yeah.
You should come back, Alice, and see them because they look great.
A number of years ago, my uncle had taken those plates and made photographs for some of us that live. I'm from a family of 11 also.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
And my dad's name was Adam Koontz.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So
Okay, this is Alice.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Alice.
Alice.
Yeah, I found out how to unmute, so. Yes,
There you
I am
go.
I am going to stop by this afternoon. I have a few more photos, one of John in particular. And I have the magazines where his photos were published.
Oh, wow. That would make an
Sounds great.
interesting addition to our display, to see those ones that were published. That'd be great.
Yes, I'll be there later this afternoon.
Okay, thanks.
This is RT. I was wondering whether you looked at the backside of the postcards that you have. The ones we have at the History Center, it always seemed as though JR sent those to somebody, his brother, I think. I don't remember what the name is, but most all of them have an address on the back of the postcards.
Right. Yeah. A lot of them, we did look at the back. It looks like he sent a lot of them to his brother Earl Koontz. And you're right. On the back of them, he appears to be very detailed. Most of the time, he does note who's in the photo, and he also notes sometimes the position of the sun or how long the photo was exposed. So he seems very meticulous in the way that he took his photographs, very thoughtful. And on the backs of the postcards is kind of where we infer that from. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's interesting that so many of his photos were made into postcards and cabinet cards. He did not seem to be shy about his talent. You know, he wasn't hiding that under a bushel. He wanted it out there. You know, to make a postcard of a photo that you have created means that every postman between here and there is going to see it, along with everybody else. I just think that's to his credit that he recognized that he had some talent there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He did he took the photographs, but he was really showing his family members and their activities and what life was like. He was, I don't feel like he was so much interested in himself as documenting or showing other things.
Yeah, he certainly made a record of the family life on the farm.
He had, in 1915, he put out a whole series of pictures of farming. And one of them is the first tractor demonstration on the farm. And that was in 1915. And everyone was invited to come out and see this tractor. Many thought that it had no future, but and then it was demonstrated that same year at the Bremen Fair. And there's a great picture of them around the tractor showing what it was capable of doing. But again, I think there were a lot of non-believers.
Yeah.
But there's a whole great series of farming pictures that he did a great job with.
Yeah.
Particularly the Oliver plow. He shows the Oliver plow. That was the product that they were selling in Bremen. So.
Sarah, I think we used one of the tractor pictures in the ones that we hung up in the meeting room, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
So people come in to see the pictures, they can see the one that you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Stop on in, and you'll see a variety of his work over time, and you can see how it changes, but also the essence sort of stays the same of what you were talking about, just capturing the life of his family and friends. Yeah, yeah.
Derek, excuse me, Derek, maybe you can help us out with this a little bit too. We think one of his brothers was also a photographer, right?
Right, Milton was also a photographer.
Yeah, that's the name.
So must have run in the family, because it sounds like there's some other folks who were photographers too from some earlier comments that were made.
They were into motorcycles as well, and it must have been a very interesting, fun family. I think that they did a lot of things together as brothers.
Yeah, we have some really great pictures of the motorcycles too, that will both online and here in the museum that people can see. And were they motorcycle dealers? Did we talk about that at one point? Did they sell also?
Yeah, I think they did some, or at least servicing.
Okay.
But I did not see any advertisements in the local newspaper, the Bremen Inquirer, for either John as a photographer or for, I think there was a couple of motorcycle advertisements, now that I think about it. I had to look that up again.
Yeah, because I remember we talked about something
About motorcycles. There is an interesting picture of what might be called the first ski mobile, which was a front end mounted on a motorcycle, and whether it was homemade or whether it was a product they bought, I don't know. I've never been able to find any additional information about it, but it was a early ski mobile operated by a motorcycle, and you can see the motorcycle and how they modified it. Put keys on the front.
Yeah, it looked like they sort of actively used the motorcycles for farm work too. So
Yeah,
kind of fascinating.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that was another idea they were promoting.
We're working on, and
Yeah.
see how it will
In
work
addition to the tractor, you could use your motorcycle around the farm.
out. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Thinking maybe not. Well, just once again, the majority of the photos will be displayed, are currently being set up in the museum. So starting this weekend or next week, feel free to come on in. The exhibit will be up for a few months, so you don't have to rush in. And there are the three parts. We have the window in our gallery, and then in our community room is where a majority of his work is displayed. If you can't make it in, then check out our website, and we'll be uploading a lot of his photos there. And that'll be next week as well.
Derek? Hello, Derek, are you still there?
Sure, yes.
Might put a little plug in for your Flickr site too, as long as because you've got a lot of the Koontz photos on the Flickr site.
Yeah.
Certainly, yeah. At Historic Bremen, we have not only a regular website, but also a Flickr account that you can reach from that has about 17,000 photographs and newspaper clippings and maps and other items that you can search to find all kinds of things about German Township. And
So
several
well
Koontz.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Several Koontz albums specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. When I get into that Flickr site, I can't get out.
Yeah.
I kind of fall in, and I just go from thing to thing, just because it's so interesting.
Yeah, it's
and
such
well done.
a gift for the community, I think.
Yeah.
To have all that stuff recorded and organized and accessible.
Yeah, so if you are interested in the world of Koontz and photography, visit Historic Bremen's Flickr account, visit our website, and if you forget something, just go to our Facebook page. All of our information is there. Check us out on social media. And then if there aren't any other questions, I don't think so. Thank you again to our assistant director.
I think I'm here in Virginia.
Oh, Virginia.
Thank you for doing this. It was very, very interesting. Yeah.
Of
Thanks
course.
for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. We love being able to share. Derek, do you have?
Yeah, I just did a quick search on something I hadn't searched before in the newspaper, which was on the Koontz motorcycle. And I did come up with an ad for Standard Oil that mentions that some service was done by the Koontz Brothers Motorcycle Garage. So they didn't advertise themselves, but other people did.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been well known in the community
Yeah.
then that they, yeah,
Yeah, that's true. Just word of mouth.
right, yeah. All right, fantastic. Oh, we have a message. Thank you for doing this for those of us from out of state. Yes, Zoom has made it's such a great tool. We can share things. Usually our brown bags are in person, but because of COVID, we're on Zoom. So it's great that we get to share this with so many people who don't live in Marshall County. So that's fantastic. Did you have another question, Virginia?
No, not me. I was.
Oh, just looking? Okay. All right. Well, once again, check us out on social media. Come in and see the exhibit. It's going to be up for a few months. Bring your friends, bring your family. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4. So, yeah, we can't wait to see you. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you to our speakers, Sue and Sandy. And everybody, have a great day. Happy
Thanks a lot.
Friday.
Everybody,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Good.